Well, welcome back to another HC Conversations podcast, a ministry of Hope Community here in Minerva, where our mission as a church is to make disciples of Jesus that are transformed by truth, sent on mission, and live in unity. And that's our goal with this podcast, that it would help you on your discipleship journey to Jesus. I'm Paul.
And I am.
And you'll notice that we are back to drinking coffee. We had a couple weeks off. We're drinking some good decaf today.
Yes.
Shout out. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just from our friends at Phoenix Roasters. They have incredible coffee. And it's just an incredible mission, you know, to work with missional farmers and make good coffee. It's coffee that matters, you know?
That's right.
Doing good, one cup at a time.
And the
Fighting terrorism.
Fighting terrorism. That's right. The very countries that are exporting terrorism, we are importing the love and forgiveness of Jesus.
That's right.
Yeah.
You have no idea what we're talking about, but man,
Some of
our
our
friends down at Phoenix, when we'd be serving coffee at conferences, some of the things that would just be being said as we serve cups of coffee to people. One of which was this coffee is fighting terrorism.
That's right.
Another would quite often be that this is wedding feast quality coffee, right? Because it's a lot of coffee you serve at churches and stuff is just kind of garbage. And Jesus didn't give garbage, you know. So the wedding feast in Cana, he gave the best wine. So this is wedding feast quality coffee.
Yep.
Or some other things. Hot ice cream.
Hot ice cream. People taste like it does taste like hot ice cream.
That was the pre-mix.
No, don't listen to that.
It's got cream and sugar already in it. The perfect amount of cream and sugar. Which, by the way, okay, again, people don't care about this, but we coined that. These two guys from Ohio, the first year that we were doing that, and like the pre-mix already had cream and sugar in it, but we would start saying it's got the perfect amount of cream and sugar. People are like, what's pre-mix? I got the perfect amount of cream and sugar already in it. And then the next time we went back to serve coffee, everyone was saying it. And I'm like, we did that.
But it is this coffee.
It is so good.
No cream and sugar.
No cream
it
and
is
sugar.
Swiss water decaf or Swiss water processed decaf. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So smooth.
It's black, which humorously or whatever, tongue in cheek, Brian would come in and say, which also has the perfect amount of cream and sugar in it, which is none.
That's right.
Oh, this is just story time.
Okay.
People who are, part of, what's the word for people that use, like, we're all part of the British Empire? You know, like Canada and Australia and
Commonwealth.
the UK. Commonwealth folks. We'd be at these ministry conferences and they'd come and get a cup of coffee, and when you tell them about the premix, all of them would always pretty much say the same thing. Oh, no sugar. No sugar. Like, they want cream in it, but no sugar, so they make it themselves. But every single time, no sugar. So, I don't know. But folks from the Commonwealth don't like sugar as much as us Americans do. Nobody likes sugar as much as us Americans do. It's a conversation for another day.
That's right.
But this is good coffee. Get yourself some.
All right. So Phil, do you want to lead us to where we're going today?
I have no idea where we're going at this point. Yeah, so yesterday, Paul, you've been preaching the last couple weeks, man. Really appreciate that. You have taken us through the Patriarchs. It just kind of happened. That wasn't really planned. Like we had you planned for these weeks, but you picked up and you got us through Abraham and then Isaac.
No.
You talked.
Didn't talk about Isaac.
But Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then Jacob's son, specifically yesterday, focusing on Joseph. And so you brought us through this. It's not even the second half. It's like the second 2/3, 3/4 of Genesis.
Yeah, and I had to recap a lot because there's so much that happened between like each of the sections that we covered.
Yeah.
That's just like, to not cover it, the passage isn't gonna make sense. So it's like I gotta like summarize it for our
I'm
congregation.
gonna put you on the spot. So speaking of summarizing,
Yeah.
if you were to have to summarize your 3 weeks, like basically the section of Genesis that we would call like the Patriarchs and what God is doing there, put that for us in one sentence.
One sentence.
I
That's
know.
tough,
I
man.
had to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Or two, we'll give you some leeway. Give me a run-on sentence.
Trying to figure out how I want to start that, because my words really matter in this one sentence. So,
I put you under pressure.
so it's probably going to be a run-on sentence or a couple sentences. But God chose Abram to bless the whole world. Through his descendants, he blessed the world, and at the end of Genesis, we see the fulfillment of that coming to fruition.
Right, because now they're multiplied and they're scattered.
Yeah, and we see God making this promise to Abram that his after in the covenant ceremony that we talked about a couple weeks ago, that his children would end up in Egypt. It's like, well, how are they going to get in Egypt? Well, then we get to Joseph.
Yeah.
And God rescues Joseph and his family through the famine by giving Joseph insight into dreams. His family sees that God can provide for them in this foreign land in Egypt. And so they come, and that's how his family ends up in Egypt. Yeah. Fun little fact that I left out. Whenever God disinherited the nations in Genesis chapter 10, there were 70 nations.
Or 72.
Or 72, depending
on
the translation. Yeah. Whenever Joseph's family comes to the land of Egypt, how many people moved there?
70.
70.
Yeah.
And so it's this picture of God redeeming all of the nations out of this one family group. Yeah. And I just think it's such a just exciting, a hopeful picture. That's like from the very outset, God was setting to redeem that which was lost when sin entered the world. Yeah. And we see him using human failure and brokenness and sin and people's decisions and be like, okay, I can still work with that. Yeah. And I can turn things around and use them for good, for the benefit of other people. And that was one of my main points yesterday, is that a lot of times we hear the saying that God can take what was meant for evil and turn it back for good. This comes from Genesis chapter 50. But a lot of times we think that that's good for me. That
it's my season.
Yes,
it's my blessing.
I receive it. But actually, the way the Bible paints it is that it's not benefit for you. Sure, you are going to benefit, but it's for the good of others.
Yeah. It's the benefit for everyone, and because it's a benefit for everyone, it's going to be a benefit for you as well. And that's been the thing the last couple of weeks that I've really picked up on with, you've been going through these messages of just like God made the promise. He is the one who will be faithful to the promise. Because everyone, from Abraham to Isaac, who we didn't really talk about, but he's got all his own foibles, to Jacob, to Jacob's sons, it's like none of them are faithful. They're all, they're like character studies in what not to do. Like they're pretty crummy humans. You made the joke yesterday, because Jacob, it's like he has a favorite son because this is the son from his favorite wife, and you're like, shouldn't have favorite children, shouldn't have favorite wives, should only have one wife, and she should be your favorite. And it's just like, but like through that, like just like that through line, it's like, because God made the promise and he's going to fulfill it. Because that's what these early chapters of Genesis are about. Actually, that's what the whole Old Testament ends up being about. God made a promise to do something for the whole world, to fix what went wrong. And no amount of human stupidity is going to get in the way of him fulfilling that promise.
Joseph was the chosen by God to rule over his brothers. That's what the dreams were showing him. Yeah. And Joseph was like arrogant about it, like, God picked me, I'm going to rule over you. Brothers ticked, said, hey, let's kill him. They're like, Reuben, the firstborn, he was like, maybe we shouldn't kill him. Let's just throw him down in this pit, in this cistern.
I need a Bible. Go
ahead. And so that's what they did. Reuben is off somewhere, and the brothers see this caravan of people traveling to Egypt, Ishmaelites, so descendants of Ishmael, the first son of Abraham.
That's another theme that comes up too. The sin of God's people coming back around to be like, where did this person come from? Abraham and Sarah's stupid decision to try to take matters into their own hands.
To not trust God, to produce the blessing on their own. And so they see this caravan coming, and they decide, oh, you know what? Instead of killing our brother and not making anything, let's sell him into slavery. We can profit off of this. So God takes that and he uses it for the benefit of trying to save the whole nation. That nothing can threaten God's promise and his ability to fulfill the covenant. Not Joseph's brothers rejecting Joseph and selling him into slavery. Not Potiphar's wife falsely accusing him of sexual assault and him getting thrown into prison. That cannot stop God from fulfilling the covenant. God's like, okay. God lifts him up into second in command, gives him the ability gives him the ability to interpret dreams. That puts him in second command in Egypt. And then not even famine itself can crush God's ability to fulfill his promise. That it seems like that's going to be the threat that will kill off the promised children of Abram. And God's like, no, this cannot stop me.
Yeah, and that's going to introduce a theme that's going to be cyclical throughout the Old Testament, specifically the picture of what is first embodied in one person in Joseph in Egypt, in slavery and imprisonment, will end up being embodied by the whole nation of Egypt in slavery and in imprisonment. And yet God was with them, and God delivered them, and the promise, like, it's not going to thwart the promise. And so, like, that's just going to be a cycle that repeats, whether it's here in Egypt, whether it becomes later on in the Assyrian exile, the Babylonian exile, the Persian, like, all coming together. Or whether it be even moments when Israel itself becomes the bad guy.
Yeah.
And yet there's this picture. It's like, okay, yeah, but God's people are in slavery and they're in captivity, and yet God is with them and he has not forgotten them and he will fulfill the promise. And so from the very first book of the Bible, it's like, here's this thing to be looking for.
Yeah. And there's this theme that gets picked up by later biblical authors that starts here at the end of Genesis. And I actually want to read it. So Genesis chapter 50, beginning in verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me into this position so I could save the lives of many people. That idea gets picked up and reinterpreted by other biblical authors, but especially when the nation of Israel is carried off into exile. This is the part that got left out of my message yesterday. Most notably the prophet Isaiah. In Isaiah chapter 40, this major turn in Isaiah's prophecy, where suddenly you hear God, the prophet crying out, comfort for my people, says God. And it's pointing back to this moment where Joseph, he points out to his brothers that what was intended to harm me, this evil, was actually God's way, that God was able to redeem this and use this to bring good. Yep. And so the prophets are looking back at the sins of Israel's people, and that what the enemy meant to harm, that God can use this to bring comfort, to bring good for the blessing of other people. Yeah,
and it's cool too, because then that, obviously we'll get there someday in this series through the Bible, but that section, that turning point in Isaiah where comfort for my people, it's within that section of Isaiah that you get like the most kind of glaring pictures of the hopeful, messianic. It's within that section that kind of culminates in the suffering servant thing of like, what is this comfort going to look like? What is it going to look like when God shows up and delivers his people? And you get the suffering servant picture, and you get like Israel's redemption. You're like, it's all moving towards Jesus, as the whole Bible is. That's the driving thought that we're trying to help our church to understand this year.
Yeah, and even that portrait of the suffering servant, I didn't plan to go here, but you said it. You read that and you're like, well, how can that bring comfort? Because that seems like that's cursing. And here is that same theme of God taking what the enemy meant for evil and turning it back on itself.
It's the ultimate example.
It is.
Yeah. Like the worst thing, objectively, the worst thing that has ever happened. The perfect, sinless Son of God, falsely accused, brutally beaten, murdered, tortured, and it seems like evil has won. What was meant for evil is then turned for good. And as you made the point, it's not good for our own sake or the own person's sake. It's like the good that was meant for that evil was for the sake of the world, for everyone. For everyone. Right? So yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times, I went to Romans 8:28 through 29. For God works all things together for those, for good for those who trust him. Because a lot of times we hear this passage and we hear that passage.
Oh yeah, those two link right together.
And so we're like, okay, God's going to bring good out of this situation. And so a lot of times we miss the fact that what God wants to do through that situation is to make us more like Jesus. So we instead, we don't see that opportunity for us to be shaped and molded and our character to grow. Instead, we're looking for our idea and our picture of good to come about. And when that doesn't happen, we either ignore these sections of the Bible because we're just like, yeah, I don't quite buy that because this thing happened to me and nothing good came of it. I didn't grow spiritually because I was looking for this good thing for me. And so ultimately it was a rejection of God being able to turn things around and use them for the blessing of others.
Yeah. And I think, like, I love to, in that Romans 8:28, it works for the good of those who love God and who are called according to His purposes. Because again, it's not about simply for me. It's what is the purpose of God? The purpose of God ultimately, it's the gospel. It is what Jesus has done for all people. And I love that yesterday too, you also included verse 29. Most people stop at verse 28.
Yeah.
All things work together for the good, but verse 29, those He foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son. So like you said, ultimately, everything that we go through in life, especially the hard moments and the hard parts, they are to conform us into the image of the Son. And they can do that. God can work that for our good, but He won't force that to be for our good. Like there is a participation with the work of the Holy Spirit that we are responsible for.
And that's definitely what we see in Joseph's story. That's what we see in Romans. We'll come back to that in a little bit. But we see Joseph submitting to God and His plan. You know, I said in my message yesterday that Joseph had to hit rock bottom so hard that it forced him, like literally hit rock bottom, be thrown into a cistern, be thrown into a prison, and then he wasn't lifted up by his own strength, he was lifted up by God. And he submitted to God's rule and reign. So we get this picture then in Romans chapter 8, where the Apostle Paul is talking about the Holy Spirit and us walking in step with the Spirit and praying by the power of the Spirit. So we are submitted to God's plan, His authority. And then when bad things happen, all things work together. Why? Because we are submitted to God's plan and His will for our life. And that's ultimately to spread the gospel. And then I guess the benefit of that for us is making us more like Jesus. Yeah. And a lot of times we're like I can become like Jesus just by reading the Bible, just by doing all these things. God, any other way but by making me go through hard things. Yeah. And that's probably the wrong phrase to say, but that's how we see it. That God isn't the one making bad things happen to us. We live in a broken, sinful, messed up world, and so bad things happen all the time. Yeah. But God takes those things and redeems them. Now,
that's an important distinction to make for us, for our church, for how we, like our theological perspective. Because as you were talking about things, I was like, you know, there is a subset of Christianity that would say, not only can God use the bad things, but He is causing the bad things. And they would have a way of explaining why that's not true, but the idea that God has, that He has basically is sovereignly predestined all things to happen, right? So that everything is planned out and going exactly how God would want it. Even the bad things that happen in our lives, we would push back against that. Say, no, that doesn't seem to be the way, that's not what we see in Scripture. Good-hearted Christians disagree on that. We would say that God can use the bad, but that does not mean that He causes the bad. You know, I think my view on God is He is big enough to be able to accomplish His plan, His goal, His purpose, regardless of how we might try to
oh my
go
gosh,
in different
and that's
directions.
what we see through the first part of Genesis.
Right, and so whenever, you know, it's interesting, earlier in this conversation, you had said that, you know, God tells Abraham, your descendants are going to be, you know, in a foreign land, they're going to be slaves there. And it's like, and you begin to ask the question, did that have to happen? I don't think so. I think like God's plan of redemption could have went off without that chapter. Maybe they would have got into Egypt some other way. Maybe they wouldn't have done the whole Egypt thing. But it's like our human actions won't stop His overarching plan of the salvation of the world. But just because He says this will happen does not mean like He's, you know, He's not the puppet master pulling the string. So it's just, or you know, all the series of events in Joseph's life. Did it have to happen that way? No, probably not. So anyway, just interesting to think about.
Yeah.
God can use bad things. That doesn't mean He's... I had this very, you know, I was like in middle school and high school, so of course it was an immature view, where I was Christian enough, although I was not active in my faith, to believe in God, but it almost becomes superstitious, where it's like, if anything bad happens, like God is... Basically, don't sin because God will make something bad happen then, like as if He's just controlling every aspect of life. I was like, that's not how that works.
I mean, yeah, so God might not be causing that to happen like directly, but just how He set up the world to function.
Oh, yeah.
If you make terrible decisions, like you're going to reap the consequences of that. But here's the thing.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's the way.
Here's the thing. God can still take that and redeem it. And God is with you in your stupid like
Yeah.
living in the consequences.
Yeah.
So Judah, the brother of Joseph, so we skipped right over that incident. So,
yeah, I want to come back to that.
so you have, actually, let me flip back here so I've got the exact chapter. Let me get that here. So you've got between Genesis 37 and 39, you've got this contrasting story with Joseph and his brother Judah.
Judah's terrible.
He is terrible. So a lot of times, by the way, we picture these people as like teenagers maybe, but they're like adults with families.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they bring all their families to
Joseph
Egypt.
wasn't at that time. You know, he got married in Egypt, had kids there. But Judah, he had grown kids.
Yeah.
He had grown kids.
He had a daughter-in-law.
And he had a daughter-in-law. His oldest brother or son got married, and she. She ended up not having any kids with him. He died, and so it was common during that time. It's called levirate marriage. That if a son died, not leaving any heirs, then it was the job of the younger son, the next son, to marry that brother's wife and
Keep the line going.
yeah, to keep the line going. And so that happens, but then his sons are wicked.
Yeah, they're like,
they
"No, we don't wanna do
they
it."
refuse to do that. And so what ends up happening is this daughter-in-law, Tamar of Judah, ends up realizing like nothing's going to happen. He promised to give me the younger son. Once he got old enough, that's happened. I'm going to be just a widow the rest of my life. So what's she do? She dresses as a prostitute, pretends to be somebody that she's not, tricks her father-in-law into sleeping with her, gets pregnant by him, and then he realizes that she was more righteous than he was because he did not keep his vow. She was willing to do whatever it took, even if committing immorality, to fulfill the promise.
Yeah, it's a whole messed up, yeah.
Yeah.
So it goes to show, it's like these people are not, it's not a nice clean story. It's not happily ever after. They are messed up every step along the way. But it gets back to, again, this is God's promise and he is doing it. No matter how many twists and turns it takes and how sinful people are, he is going to bring about the redemption of the world through, the seed of the woman promised all the way to Eve and then through Abraham and Abraham's family. And so it is pretty incredible to see.
Yeah. I want to add then you have contrasting Joseph in Potiphar's house where his wife says, come to bed with me, come lie with me. And Joseph's like, nope. Versus his brother is like, okay, I'll do that. And so you have just the contrasting moral integrity of these two brothers. But then by the end of the story, you see Judah actually being willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of Joseph's younger brother, Benjamin. So Joseph and Benjamin were the sons of Rachel, the favored
brothers.
Yes, the favored wife of Jacob.
Jacob's favorite wife and Jacob's favorite sons.
Yep. And so when Joseph was sold into slavery, he didn't know about Benjamin. Benjamin wasn't born yet. Benjamin came along afterwards. And so Jacob says that, if you let Benjamin go, I will die. And so Reuben makes a promise that I will not let that happen. I will sacrifice myself for Benjamin. And so you have this heart transformation. And then ultimately through the line of Judah, Jesus is born. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah.
Yeah, and I just want to draw some attention to that too, because it's interesting that if you're just kind of looking without seeing like the layers below it, Joseph's story is kind of random in terms of the tribe that the Messiah would come from. Like Joseph, there is no tribe of Joseph. It gets split into two for his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. But the Messiah doesn't come from them. It's like, so we're looking for the tribe of Judah. And yet, woven within the Joseph story, you see these little moments and these little things that's like, there is a transformation of Judah, and it just goes to show, and you see this actually in the genealogies of Jesus. It's like he is a part of a line that the whole point is Jesus is the Savior. He's the Messiah. Even those that were part of his line were messed up. Some of them were prostitutes, all kinds of different stuff. But yet you can just see this little thread being woven through. And so in the middle of the Joseph kind of story, before Jacob dies, he blesses all of his sons. And, they're just kind of random blessings that make sense for that time and place.
Issachar is a sturdy donkey.
You hear that guy's dad said, I'm a sturdy donkey. You're like, what? Okay. But listen to the blessing he gives Judah and like the position of rule. And it's just tucked into a story that mostly seems to be about Joseph and his line and what he's doing, but really what's going in the undercurrent. So this is what the blessing that Judah receives. This is Genesis 49, starting verse 8. Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the necks of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. Judah is a young lion, which that idea comes up, that the lion of the tribe of Judah, right? Judah's a young lion, my son. You return from the kill. He crouches. He lies down like a lion or a lioness. Who dares to rouse him? Verse 10, the scepter, so place of rule and authority, will not depart from Judah, or the staff from between his feet, until he whose right it is comes, and the obedience of the peoples belong to him. He ties his donkey to a vine, and the colt of his donkey to the choice vine. He washes his clothes in wine, and his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, his teeth are whiter than milk. And so again, some very ancient world pictures. You're like, what does that mean? But then the things that we start to know about the lion of the tribe of Judah and the lineage that comes thereof, and a king whose rule will never end. The scepter will not depart from him. And man, that at the end of verse 11, he washes his clothes in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. And you're like, well, that's weird. What is that all about? But then you get into Isaiah, and you read about him treading, like the
wine press.
Messiah that's coming is going to tread the wine press. And then this picture of wine and the cup of wine and the cup of God's wrath against evil and sin, and he's going to drink it. And that becomes a picture of God enacting judgment and justice on sin and evil. And this one from Judah, his robes are like dipped in the blood of these grapes or of this wine. And you get all the way to Revelation, and Jesus shows up, and before the battle, he's already covered in blood. Why? Because it's his own blood. Like his sacrifice has taken on God's wrath. And so, man, all the way back in Genesis, of a blessing given to Judah in a story that doesn't even seem to be about him. It's mostly focused on Joseph. You get these things here. They're like, wait a second. This sounds like awful lot like Jesus. It's like, yeah, because that's the point. That's the point.
Yeah, and the point of the Joseph story. So you have these people throughout the Bible, throughout Genesis and Exodus, that are portraits of Christ.
Yeah.
So you have Noah and his family delivering God's people through the floodwaters. Picture of Jesus rescuing his people. You see Abram, another Christ figure. You see that with Jacob, delivering his family. And then you also see Joseph delivering his family. And it's through Joseph's actions that Judah then gets carried forward.
That line is preserved so that this blessing can come true.
Yep.
And we're going to see that throughout the Old Testament. There's these figures that you're like, oh, might they be the promise that was made? We're looking for the snake crusher.
The snake crusher.
And then you're like, nah, they've got some issues. And so, here we have Joseph, but we're going to start Exodus this week, and Moses is going to be one of the most prominent of like, is this the guy? And then we're going to get into David, and on it goes. And then in the exile, super similar to the Joseph story is Daniel. And okay, he's in a foreign government, in a foreign position now. How is he going to respond? And it's all just filling out this picture and setting us up for open up the New Testament. And the New Testament authors, the gospel writers especially, they're just geniuses in connecting all these things together, being like big flashing red. It's Jesus, it's him. He's the one we're waiting for.
I want to point out one thing. So in Jacob's sons, so Reuben is the oldest. We see Reuben, with Joseph and not wanting to kill him, but he wants to actually rescue him. So it's like, is Reuben going to be the snake crusher? But then what happens to Reuben? He ends up sleeping with his father's wife.
And so, well, mark him off the list.
So it's like, okay, he's not the one. Actually, his dad curses him instead of blesses him.
Yeah.
And then we see this mysterious one that we don't expect, Judah. And God using that.
Yeah. Well, that also shows just the mixed bag that humanity is.
Yeah.
We'll do something incredible that's like, yes, like you're living into like the kind of sense of a true human that a human is supposed to be one minute, and then the next minute, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And so we need that one who will come that is just righteous and
Yeah.
perfect all the time.
Yeah, because there is no one righteous, no, not one, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God.
Yeah. Let me pause here for a minute. I don't know if you have much more to say, and just remind our audience. We made this reminder a couple of weeks ago. If you're not making these connections right away, that's okay. This takes a lot of time and practice and time in the Word. And even for us, we're not exactly young men anymore. We're not old yet, but we're not young. We've been at this for a while. I'm still amazed at things that I don't pick up on. And then I'll read in the commentary or I'll hear, I'm like, oh my gosh, I never saw that connection.
Yeah.
And so the goal is not to become 100% like proficient and perfect at reading the Bible and picking up on all these things. The goal is for God, through His Spirit, as you're engaging in the Scripture, to reveal more of who He is and what He has done. And so as long as we have the heart to keep learning and leaning in, that's what it's about.
Yeah. And some of you're reading the Bible for the very first time this year.
Yeah.
So it's like some of these stories you've never read before. You have no context. Versus us, it's like we've read them multiple times. We've kind of lived in this world of being able to pick up on the patterns and stuff. And so you might not pick up on it the first time.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, I don't know where the story's going. But the next time that you read it, you might just start to see more. And the third time and the fourth time that you read it, you're going to start picking up on these things.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be...
I just took a screenshot.
I have no idea how I did that. I just tapped the screen. It took a screenshot somehow. Yeah. It's just going to make you fall more and more in love with the God of the Bible.
Yeah, and just celebrate the moments when the light bulb goes off and you make a connection. Just celebrate that for a minute. It's good. It was so cool. Last night, students, we're tracking along with the same kind of stories, and so I'm giving a big overview of the Joseph story, and then we're talking about chapter 50, verse 20, mostly. That's the big, God can take what was meant for evil, use it for good, to bless other people. And we get to our, small group discussion time, and one of our students, a high school boy, his name's Caleb, he's a junior, and he's like, I noticed that Joseph's dream came true. He said his brothers were going to bow down to him, and they did. They're at the end. And mind you mentioned that at church on Sunday. He was not at church on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
He doesn't come on Sunday mornings. Yeah. It's just he made that connection just from talking about it and seeing he had this dream that his brother's going to bow down to him, and then it's happening in kind of an unexpected way. And
the author of Scripture doesn't tell us that. And here's where God fulfilled that dream. The author wants us to pick up on that, and he did.
And I was like, listen, man, that isn't unless you spend. I'm I kind of doubt that you spend your free time. A hobby of yours is probably not reading biblical commentaries. So really good job on picking up on that, because that's not something that just leaps off the page. And so we celebrated that. That was the point.
That's cool.
Celebrate when you make those connections.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So the next thing that I want to just come back to, we talked about this a little bit. The fact that God, unless you have something else to say.
No, that was it. I'm good.
The fact that God works things together for good, and that good is primarily about making us more like Jesus, that we learned from Romans 8:29. And so for us as followers of Jesus, we have to trust that somehow that is better than any other thing that God could give us. It's better than God reversing whatever happened. It's better than God giving us back our loved one that we lost. It's better than God healing our illness. Is that, number one, God is with us in those things, and that God can and is using them to make us more like Jesus. And that's so much better and greater than anything else God could give us.
Yeah.
So we have to trust that,
Yeah.
because those are the very words of God that give life. And so our job is, I don't understand it, but I'm going to trust it and trust that that is the greatest possible good that you can give me.
Yeah.
The next thing I want to talk about, and I got caught up on this on a little bit. So a lot of people like to make the end of Genesis, the Joseph story, about forgiveness. That's what kids' stories are about. And definitely there's a little bit of that there, but the primary goal of that is to show how God can redeem and turn things around. And so if you grew up hearing it about forgiveness, that's good.
That's true.
There's a lot that the Bible has. There's a lot the Bible has to say about forgiveness. Jesus talks a lot about forgiveness, but that's not the point of the story.
Yeah, and I think we do that a lot. And I think in a good effort and a good attempt to teach, especially children, like really hard Old Testament usually stories. So you look at the Joseph story, it's like, okay, how am I going to teach this several chapters spanning all this different stuff, boil that down and teach that to a kid? And so you're like, okay, Joseph was his dad's favorite, and so his brothers didn't like him, and so they were mean, and they sold him into slavery, but God was with him, so we'll usually hit that part with the kids, and then his brothers came to get food, and Joseph forgave them. You can remember that God is with you, and you should forgive others as well. Great, right? Are those things true? Yes, absolutely. Should we teach that to kids? Yeah, absolutely. But I think we should also teach what the overarching thing is God takes what the enemy means for evil, bad things. He can still use that for good, for your good and the good of others. Yeah. So anyway, even as adults, then, if we received a very flattened picture of a story like this, maybe as kids, it's hard to not only see it in that way. It is. So, but so that's not to say you shouldn't see those things in the story. It's like main point and then sub points. You're like, oh, main point. Look at how God is working even in the midst of terrible circumstances. He can use that. And then also, God was with Joseph, and they learned forgiveness. And you can tell there's hints that the brothers' hearts were transformed, and Joseph's heart was transformed. All those other things we can talk about as well, but don't lose sight of. Look at what God is doing, even though there was evil intent by somebody else.
Yeah, and you helped me to realize that point. I texted you earlier in the week, running an idea by you about the message. And I was like, well, the message is about this, and here's my application point. And it took me typing that out and hitting send to realize, and then you responding back later that, that's not the point of the story. Yeah. So let's just remember as we wrap up that God can take whatever situation we find ourselves in, and that God can redeem it, and that God can bring about good for the benefit of other people through us, and that we will benefit along the way, and that the good that God promises to bring isn't maybe what we're looking for, but it's what's best for us, and it's in His timing. Yep. So we'll see you back here next week as we begin Exodus.
That's right.
Have a great week.